So, as we said, the pituitary is considered the master gland, and I know you can't see squat from this picture that I have my phone on, but you can look a little bit closer at it on your own screen. So this material is just in the PowerPoint, although I think there's some ATI material about it too, but anything that covers the pituitary will come off this PowerPoint. So there are two parts to the pituitary gland, as you probably remember from A&P. We've got, if you imagine the body in the anatomical position, the part that is to the front of the brain, the anterior portion, is called the adenohypophysis. And then the part that's behind that is called the neurohypophysis. And I always just picture something that looks like one of those little speed bags that you practice on when you're boxing, just kind of hanging there in the middle of your head. Very, very deep inside the skull and very well protected usually from whatever can happen, because after all, it is the master gland. So the pituitary is pretty much responsible for production of all your hormones. It will affect your growth, how your body uses water and electrolytes, and then it's very integral to the reproductive cycle as well. Once again, not in the textbook, but you are going to want to know what is produced by the anterior pituitary and what is produced by the posterior pituitary. And the easy part of that is the posterior pituitary only produces 2 of the hormones that we'll be talking about. Everything else is anterior. So the first one here is TSH, or thyroid stimulating hormone, which does exactly what it says it does. It stimulates your thyroid to secrete 2 more hormones, T3 and T4, which we'll discuss later, to kind of help control the whole metabolism. But TSH is sort of the part of from the pituitary that influences that. HCG, or human chorionic gonadotrophin, stimulates secretion of hormones required to maintain pregnancy, and that is in fact what you are looking for when you pee on the stick to take the pregnancy test. You are looking for the presence of HCG, which normally is not going to be in the body of the childbearing person unless they are either pregnant or they have some real, hormonal issue going on. LH is luteinizing hormone. In the female, it stimulates the egg to be produced every month, hopefully just 1 egg, sometimes more. For males, it influences their secretion of testosterone, which is the main androgen or male sex hormone. FSH, or follicle stimulating hormone, stimulates the production of estrogen, the growth of eggs. So before they can pop out under the influence of luteinizing hormone, they have to grow under the influence of follicle stimulating hormone. For males, they have a big effect on sperm production. Another hormone that you really don't hear about too much is STH, and that stands for somatotropic hormone, or somatotropin, and that regulates the growth of our bodies during childhood, and it can be given as a supplement if there is a growth deficiency from hormonal reasons. So a deficiency can cause dwarfism, not a genetic dwarfism like achondroplasia, but a lack of certain hormones that contribute to growth. So somebody with various types of hereditary dwarfism aren't going to be helped by supplements of STH, but people whose pituitaries aren't working correctly and aren't producing somatotropin giving a growth hormone can help, and it's usually obtained from autopsies of humans. And then we have ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone, which helps the function of the adrenal cortex. And of course, as we talk about each one of these body systems, we'll talk more about these hormones that are produced. Now, the posterior pituitary, which is discussed on page 300 of the ATI book, that primarily produces two hormones. One is ADH and one is oxytocin. So we'll look at each one of those. ADH stands for antidiuretic hormone. If you do not make enough antidiuretic hormone, you will have a condition called DI, or diabetes insipidus. You can become very dehydrated, because what happens is your kidneys will take up all the solid particles in your urine, the sodium, the potassium, everything else that makes up the urine. They will take it back up into the bloodstream, but they will not take up the water. There isn't enough ADH to tell them to take the water too. So in that case, you're not going to get water following salt. So you can end up with dehydration and excess of electrolytes. If you have something called SIADH, syndrome of inappropriate diuretic hormone, where your pituitary is producing too much ADH, you're going to get possible water intoxication. So what this antidiuretic hormone does is to affect the amount of water secreted. So you can replace it with a synthetic antidiuretic hormone. And if you have too much, then usually it's a pituitary tumor that's causing that, and you have to look for the original source. So what you can do is give a medication called, another name for the ADH is vasopressin, and you can give that as a medication to replace the ADH that you're not making normally. This can be given IM or sub-Q, and you can see all the side effects to that. And the one you really want to watch out for is just urine intake and output. Large enough doses of ADH could cause death by just messing up your whole water balance. So, of course, you're going to be doing very careful I's and O's and probably urine-specific gravities. A synthetic form of ADH is called desmopressin, and this is given in an inhalant that a person just takes every day. Oxytocin is also produced by the posterior pituitary, and it does several things. If you have a uterus, it makes it contract, and it stimulates lactation from the breasts. It also has a lot to do with us forming bonds and attachments with other, well, I was going to say people, but it affects animals too. It's known as the attachment hormone. So this is going to relax you, promote bonding between you and other people or animals. Even, they say even petting your dog or your cat can cause you to release oxytocin, and that can kind of be a stress reducer. This I will leave here because it gives you what you're going to have both with diabetes insipidus and SIADH. With both, you're going to be very thirsty, because even though with SIADH you're going to have too much fluid, it's just sitting there in your body. It's not taking care of your thirst.